What's going on, family? How we doing this evening? Uh, whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're blessed and doing safe. I see my family on X is showing me love. For those that are watching on Rumble, how are you doing? And even on ScrewTube, I still have my people here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Make sure, ladies and gentlemen, especially my family on X, make sure you're smashing up the likes, smash up the likes, smash up the likes, ladies and gentlemen. Hit that notification bell for my people on ScrewTube. Also, I need everybody really to start moving over to Rumble. If you have not, you go to the channel Random Topics on Rumble right now. That's the actual channel, Random Topics. Just go to rumble.com and type that in. You all know I have not come on this channel with a level of regularity. Uh, that's because of issues that I've had with YouTube. Is also issues. I've had some medical issues with my foot, but it is healing. But I wanted to come on tonight and talk with you all about a serious, tragic matter that happened to this young brother, this highlight reel, uh, brother Kyren Lacy. Kyren Lacy from the LSU Tigers. He was a standout wide receiver. His senior year was actually in 2024. He was actually a high draft pick. Well, Kyren Lacy apparently has passed away at the age of 24 years old. And this is a result, apparently, of a self inflicted gunshot wound. Uh, for those that don't know, Kyren Lacy spent his time he's known as a college. Uh, he was a standout wide receiver first for the Louisiana Raising Cajuns out in Lafayette, and then he transferred to LSU, where he was a star wide receiver, especially helping the LSU Tigers win some big games, including one of his best games was against Ole Miss last year. I still remember that was in overtime, and that was a very exciting game. These are some highlights I have here, brother Kyren Lacy, some games that he's played. Yeah, he actually was the star wide receiver for the LSU Tigers, and he was actually predicted to be a top draft pick this year for in the NFL combines, uh, which was supposed to happen in a few weeks. Now, the tragic news came out in Houston. His family made the announcement that Kyron had passed. According to this note that I have here, and I'm going to share with you all this message that his father had on Facebook. Yeah, the guy was going to be a star. Who knows? He was going to if he had gotten to the Washington Commanders, reunited with Justin Daniels, how that would have been. But this is what was according to the New York Times. This is an article that they wrote. They said apparently, quote, uh, his father Kenny wrote this. He said, "Don't ignore the signs, even if they may seem small." His dad wrote, "Our lives have changed forever. This will never be okay. But God needed my baby more than he was needed here. This has to be the biggest pill our families have to swallow. But I know the love and compassion in our families will get us through. They this will never get easier, but we'll learn to live with it." So the constable's office out in Houston responded to a call Saturday evening from one of Lacey's family members who said he shot a gun into the ground, according to the sheriff's office. Lacey left before authorities arrived. When law enforcement tried to stop his car about 20 minutes later, he fled again. The pursuit lasted several miles until his car crashed, the sheriff's office said. As law enforcement officials moved to try to take him into custody, they discovered his gunshot wound and a handgun in the vehicle. He was pronounced he was pronounced deceased at the scene, and the preliminary investigation determined he this was self-inflicted, according to the sheriff's office. Now, for those that don't know, especially if you haven't been don't follow sports, Lacey was pursuing a career in the NFL. Like I said, he was a potential draft pick, and he was actually but of course he was not invited to the NFL scouting combine due to a fatal car accident that occurred back on December 17th in his hometown of Thibodaux, Louisiana, near Thibodaux, Louisiana, where a 78-year-old Marine veteran, Vietnam veteran by the name of Herman Hall was killed. Lacy was facing charges of negligent homicide, felony hit and run, and reckless operation of a vehicle. And he was turned himself in on $161,000 bond, ladies and gentlemen. So that was in January of this year. 151,000, excuse me. I was off by 10. Now, I'm going to talk about that charge in a minute. So, what is felony hit and run driving, especially in Louisiana? Well, hit and run driving essentially in Louisiana is basically when the states, this is a law that states that if you intentionally fail to render aid at the scene, give your identity, or you flee an accident, so you don't stop, and it's intentional failure to drive a vehicle. Basically, you keep going after you. The way the law is written is that you're involved or you caused the accident. So even if Kyren Lacy, let's say, did not hit the vehicles, which is not what they're alleging from what I've read in the articles and the statements, but they state you were involved in some way through your actions. And what it sounds like what happened is, and I've been through, for those that don't know, I'm going to explain a little bit about Thibodaux, Louisiana, that area. That is Thibodaux. And shout out to Dan. Shout out to, I wonder if Danielle is on here tonight. What's going on, one who cares? I don't think Danielle is on here, but Danielle is from there. That is scenic route country, ladies and gentlemen, especially those backwoods and areas like Thibodaux, the river parishes, and so forth. The interstate is a little bit further up. It is not there in these towns. So when you have especially very narrow roads where it's one way, two it's two-way traffic, one going this way, one going the other. The speed limit is 45 or 50 miles per hour. Let's say you're driving behind a slow car, and he's actually, according to what they're saying, he was charged with reckless operation of a vehicle. Basically, if you act in a criminally negligent manner with your vehicle in some way, shape, or form, they say negligent homicide because apparently they're alleging that his actions resulted in the death of Mr. Hull, and he got charged with it. So, what it sounds like, sadly, is knowing that he likely would not have a career in the NFL as a result of these charges, knowing that, because obviously if someone has died, and I don't know if his attorneys, if his attorneys were working out something with the district attorney's office or not, I'm going to read an article for you. He probably freaked out and couldn't accept it. And sadly, this was something that happened. Now, of course, he's innocent until proven guilty. We don't know the facts of what happened. He hasn't gone, and unfortunately won't go to trial, so we know what happens. And the sheriff's office, apparently, they've concluded their investigation. He was actually set to be indicted by a grand jury, I believe, starting on Monday, was when the grand jury was going to convene. So the way this law is written, when you look at it, I just want to go back to it for a second. Remember, I am an attorney. However, I am not creating this. The information I'm giving is not creating an attorney-client relationship with anyone. I'm just giving you some facts about what this charge is. So what it states that, read it carefully, a hit and run driving is the intentional failure of the driver of a vehicle involved in. So it means if you were involved in an accident or you caused an accident, to stop the vehicle at the scene of the accident, to give his identity and to render reasonable aid. And what they're saying is, I believe, because he was cutting in between cars and traffic, other vehicles had to avoid hitting each other, and I believe this was how that gentleman was killed. So, and I'm not gonna mince my words. I know I'm on ScrewTube. They've censored me already, but I've been saying and trying to avoid certain stuff. But this is what it is. This is the law. I'm an attorney reading you the actual law, and I don't think it should be ridiculous that I have to censor it so everybody can understand what I'm saying. But uh, it says whoever commits the crime of hit and run driving when there is and unfortunately there was a passing of someone, death or serious bodily injury, and is a direct result of the accident when the driver knew or should have known that. Now that's the key. If the driver knew or should have known that serious bodily injury or death had occurred, shall be fined not more than $5,000 or imprisoned with or without hard labor for not more than 10 years or both. Now, you look at the misdemeanor version, and I've handled those a lot. The law states you can't be fined not more than $500 and imprisoned for not less than 10 days, no more than 6 months or both when there's evidence. For instance, if he was consuming alcohol or controlled dangerous substance prior to the accident. So this is basically when somebody's intoxicated. If they fail to stop, give his identity, or render aid with the knowledge that his actions could affect an actual or potential present, past, or future criminal investigation or proceeding. That's very broad. If my actions, I should, if I fail to render aid and my actions could affect an actual potential present, past, with the knowledge, but how would you know that? Obviously, if you don't see the accident take place, if you're still driving off, people may be, and I've had these cases before where I've had clients who are driving away, trying to avoid another. For instance, I had a client who's trying to avoid another driver who was actually being negligent. He was trying to avoid an accident. He gets out of the way, and then a driver behind him gets scared and ends up going into a ditch. So then they call the police and try to blame that driver for the incident. They get the license plate number. The cop is gonna call them back and say, "Hey, you were at this accident. You were at this scene. Yes, you know you were. They pointed you out as being the cause of the accident." He's like, "What accident? What are you talking about?" "Well, I got to cite you for hit and run driving." "Well, how can you cite me for something if I didn't know it?" It's messed up. I think it's messed up the way that the law is written. That's my personal take on it and how it's applied with stuff. And you're trying to get people all in on it. I don't know how you can do that, but they have it here, and that's what they got Kyren on. But he was also charged with negligent homicide, which a negligent homicide charge, if we go and look up the law on negligent homicide, for instance. So I'm just going here. It's a little easier. So we go criminal law. This is the criminal code. So negligent homicide is what they call, for this is the most serious one. So the killing of a human being by criminal negligence. So they have several provision with this is whoever commits the crime of negligent homicide shall be imprisoned with or without hard labor for not more than 5 years, fined not more than $5,000 or both. Now they have different provisions, for instance, in this, which is what they were going to, if the victim was underage, which you didn't have, you had an elderly person. Uh, I don't believe there's a provision under the negligent, and there isn't. There's not a provision under the negligent homicide statutes that talks about if that person was uh, an elderly or not. However, they say here if the victim was killed by a dog or other animal, the owner of the dog or other animal shall be imprisoned for not more for with or without hot labor for not more than 5 years, or not fined more than $5,000 or both. So if the victim was basically, if it was a dog, you could still get up to 5 years in prison. Now, notice it's a little bit tougher if you're talking about a child, because if the child is 10 years or older, although they don't have nothing on teenagers here, they say it's for not, you can't get the benefit of parole, probation, or suspension of sentence for not less than 2 and no more than 5 years. So they want you to do some time on this. And what I imagine that happened with brother Kyren, is that once he saw these ramifications and stuff he was facing, especially with a grand jury convening, he realized essentially his career, his chances of playing in the NFL were probably going to be slim to none. Now, it's possible I've seen instances where NFL players who've gone to jail have come back. Look at Michael Vick. He came back from that dogfighting scandal, which I think he got railroaded on. That was just the feds trying to make an example out of him. But Mike Vick got a second chance. And I'm always, because of Andy Reid out in Philadelphia. I always got respect for Andy Reid. I think he's one of the best NFL coaches of all time. Although I have issues with his play management, especially when he was in Philadelphia. But that's another story. He got Patrick Mahomes and got his 2 Super Bowl rings. But Andy Reid gave Mike Vick a second chance after that with the dogfighting scandal. And there were people who were upset about that. I remember that clearly. I remember Dante Stallworth, who was a former Saints draft pick. He got criminal charges for, let me put myself back. Yeah, he got criminal charges for drunk driving that he ended up causing someone their life, was a result of that. And Dante went back into the NFL, uh, I believe playing for the Patriots after that. It was a DUI manslaughter charge. That was in 2009. And he ended up playing again. He was playing with the Browns, I believe. So he played with the Browns and the Ravens and Redskins. So he was able to come back. Of course, he didn't have, and Dante Stallworth, when he was with the Saints, his rookie season, uh, he was a standout for us because he just came into the league, but really he didn't have great success like talking about it. But Kyren, I'm sure at 24 years old, you think about this, you're a top wide receiver, a draft pick, and you're getting charged with a criminal act. Not only it's not just, it wasn't some fight in a bar where you could just get a slap on the wrist after doing 3 days in jail. This was a felony hit and run with a fatality and a negligent homicide charge, which means that was going to be tagged on you for your life. And someone had died purportedly. We don't know if it's true because of his accident. I say purportedly because that's what's alleged. And I'm sure it ate him up. I'm sure he was sad at the passing of this man, Mr. Hall. Now, his lawyer, speaking of which, his lawyer has spoken out against the charges. He called it a railroading. I'm not quoting him, I'm paraphrasing it. He called it a witch hunt after his passing. So according to this, Kyren's attorney, Matthew Ory, released a statement criticizing the investigation regarding his client's arrest on charges stemming from that fatal hit and run crash in Louisiana. The grand jury was going to be convening on Monday to hear evidence in the case, and Ory called the investigation targeted and overzealous, and also referred to it as a witch hunt. He said, we were very confident the evidence, after being fully collected and reviewed, will lead to a declination of the charges. He's saying that the charges would be declined. From the very beginning, this so-called investigation took on the appearance of an overzealous targeted effort, which can only be described as a witch hunt, fueled by who Kyren was and the public profile he carried. At the time of his death, Lacy, who was 24, had been accused of causing a crash in Louisiana that resulted in the death of 78-year-old man. That was Herman Hall, who we talked about. And this happened on December 17th. He turned himself in on January 12th and was jailed before being released, I stated earlier, on $151,000 bail, according to police records. So, negligent homicide, felony hit and run driving with death, and reckless operation of a vehicle. I didn't read that law to you, what that is. I didn't think maybe you wanted to hear that, but reckless operation of a vehicle, we get these, and I see these all the time. Uh, Essentially, hold on a second. Yeah, that's 1499. So it's basically the operation of any motor vehicle, aircraft, vessel, or other means of conveyance. So could that also be a bicycle? It's hard to believe that, but yes, it just depends on the facts of the case. If it's a regular Pee Wee, if it's a regular bicycle, although Pee Wee Herman's bike wasn't regular, but I don't think Pee Wee's bike could cause harm. But if you were driving it and let's say it had spikes sticking out of it, like a decker tire, and you're swerving with it, I don't know, perhaps they could do something with it. But that's the reckless operation of a vehicle statute. That's a misdemeanor. So that was nothing. Basically, that could be speeding at a higher rate. It could be, especially in those country roads. If you're talking about the speed limit being 50 and you want to pass something up, but you're doing 100 miles per hour in one of those type of cars that I think those fast, like, what's a fast car you got? A car, you could say a Corvette or a Cambro or a Charger, something like that. In any way, yeah, it could be interpreted that way. So, finish reading this statement though. I want to get back to what his attorney had to say. His attorney said, finished saying, quote, the decision by the investigating agency to charge him at all, in our view, was not only unjustified, it's disturbing. It's imperative to understand the LaFourche Parish DA to this day has not formally charged Kyren. This statement also criticized the media for a perceived role in his apparent suicide, referring to Lacy as a young man with immense promise, and he was crushed under the weight of an irresponsible and prejudiced process. The negative barrage on social media, the circulation of his mugshot by nearly every news outlet, rather than a standard photo, the recent lawsuit filed against him that named another defendant who mysteriously wasn't charged with the crime, only him, and the overall tone of coverage painted a deeply biased picture before he ever had a chance to defend himself. The NFL was also hit with criticism. Lacy declared the 2025 NFL draft 2 days after the crash. He didn't partake in LSU's bowl game, but did take part in the program's pro day in March and may have been selected in the draft later this month after 3 seasons at LSU following 2 seasons at Louisiana. There was never a presumption of innocence, which was exemplified by the NFL pulling his draft card over mere accusations without affording him the slightest chance to defend himself, the statement read. The pressure and perception likely became unbearable. This was from Matthew Ory. This was his attorney. So Matthew Ory, don't know Matthew personally. I think Matthew is out as attorney. He's out in Thibodeau. So that's obviously how he came to meet. So that's Matthew there to the left. Okay. That's probably why, because he's out in Thibodeau, because that's where Kyren is from. That's how he was able to meet him. But what do you say, family, about this? This is a tragic situation. Obviously, the passing of Kyren Lacy. Do you agree with Matthew Ory, his comments? Well, Matthew Ory seems to be I think I'm going to take him at his word. I think he's a competent defense attorney. He's defending his client, but not only he's defending him in life, he's defending him in death as well. And this is a tragic situation, especially when you're talking about a 24-year-old man, young man who had his life ahead of him, being involved in, or being named rather, in this accident that, and for more apparent reasons, we don't know if it is 1,000% true or false. It could be turned out he was innocent. Now, they mentioned another gentleman or another name, a person was named in a lawsuit. I don't have the lawsuit in front of me, but the person who apparently, he's saying there was another person that was involved, he was not criminally investigated. What are the facts of that investigation? So all of that would have to come out at a trial. They would have to prove, the prosecutors would have had to have proven every, if they were going to charge him, every element of those statutes that I read to you. They have to prove it word for word. Was he being named just because was he being named just because he was a high profile athlete about to declare for the NFL draft? Possibly has something to do with it. I think that had a lot to do with Michael Vick being prosecuted with the scandal with the dogfighting incident. Because remember, Michael Vick wasn't necessarily the one that was messing with the dogs or planning everything or so forth. He owned the property. The homes were his. The homes where these took place were his. And so the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, wanted to make an example out of Michael Vick. They wanted to make an example out of him. And luckily, Michael was able to get a second chance, which some people get falsely accused of things or wrongfully convicted, or let's just say overcharged. That sometimes that doesn't happen for them, but he was lucky to have someone looking out for him, as I mentioned before. So I look at this and I'm listening to, tragically, I'm seeing a young man who had his life ahead of him and he basically took it. And, you know, the other part of what we were going to talk about tonight is mental health. And my understanding, there were people who reached out to Kyren when all of this was going on. And I believe, and this happened out in Houston. And Meek Robertson, who's an NFL star, Robertson actually plays, I believe, for the Detroit Lions. So he's a cornerback, and he's also from Thibodaux, Louisiana. And he shared some text messages he shared with uh, Kyren, basically to know that he had his back. So this is some of the messages that he wrote here, and these are sad to listen to or read, knowing what he was going through. He said, I need you to trust the process and put it in God's hands. I know this is a tough time, but my faith is high. I don't know what happened because I don't want to get into that. But if you are in the wrong, everyone makes mistakes. It's all a learning process. Keep faith, Brody. I'm always right here, right or wrong. All love, brother. Promise to me to keep your head on, bro. That's all I ask. Don't get discouraged by nothing. He says, I promise, big bro, we're going to talk in person. Go get that ring. Appreciate that, bro. Needed to hear that. They gonna feel us. So they've been sharing, and I didn't know they were gonna have this, but they've been sharing. Obviously, when you think of Kyren Lacy, they put their mugshot, which is what they always do, unfortunately, to a lot of black men when they get charged or arrested with something. They also like to bring up their past history if they have any to that effect. So this is just a tragic situation, y'all. I'm at a loss for words. You hate seeing that happen to someone, especially that young, who is in, you know, like I said, has a lot of life to live. Even if he did jail time, if that were to happen, he still probably could have gotten out. Now, he may have not had an NFL career, like thinking about it, if he were convicted of something, but maybe he could have found another career, or still lived his life in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe he would have been found not guilty. We'll never know, sadly. Uh, if that had came out at the trial, if anything, information had came out, uh, sadly, that we don't have that information. Sorry, I'm just texting someone. What do y'all think of this? So I want to talk about this, especially when we talk about mental health. You got to reach out to someone if you're having a problem. And I don't know what his situation was like, but his father's message was yes, one of the most heartbreaking things I saw. I know that his father and his parents, his brothers and sisters, they're eating up. All his family are probably eating up over this. Uh, I can only imagine you lose a child, especially in this manner. And a lot of people, you never know how a person reacts privately. What a person, especially if you're having mental health issues and struggles, you don't know how people are feeling internally. We never know. You can think somebody is the nicest person, can be the smartest, nicest person in the room, always happy, has the brightest smile, but on the inside, that person's smile is a frown, and they're going through something internally they can't shake up. A lot of people aren't built and strong for this stuff, but I'm here to say that you are. There's a God, and there's a way. And I wish, his family nothing but the best. I keep them in my thoughts and in my prayers, and they have my condolences. But please just reach out to somebody if you're having these issues. I wish he would have talked to his lawyer before this. And who knows? It's a tragic thing. Oh, there's Danielle. How you doing this evening, Danielle? We talking about brother Kyren Lacy. Brother Kyren Lacy from your neck of the woods. Yeah, this is a tragic thing. And I don't know if Danielle, I don't think you watch football, but I'm sure you know Kyren because he's from Thibodeau. And I'm just looking at some highlights. These are some highlights from some games this year uh, that we have here. We just remembering this brother. He was a standout receiver. He actually helped because Nussmeyer to me is basically he's like Jared. He's Jared Lee 2.0. He's hit or miss. He can have big games, but he's gonna cost you about three turnovers. And Kyrie Lacy bailed him out a lot of times. Yeah. So this was the game. This was the one that made me a Kyren Lacy fan. This is the one that stood out because he really, yeah. In overtime, he caught the game-winning touchdown, the walk-off touchdown. I'm just looking at highlights, guys. So this is when they played Alabama. Yeah, he was still trying to help LSU win the game. Look, 42-6. He's still catching bombs. Yeah, he was a star right out. I don't have the audio turned on because I'll probably get a little strike. I don't want that. But yeah, this brother had it all. Go, he had it all, man. He definitely had the it factor. Kyren Lacy is the was a standout wide receiver for the LSU Tigers. I'm surprised. Well, Danielle, I told y'all Danielle doesn't follow football, so it doesn't surprise me. But she said the name sounds familiar. Yeah, he is from your neck of the woods out in Thibodeau. Well, tragically, Kyren passed away on Saturday evening due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Uh, he had been indicted. Well, he was not formally indicted, but he was arrested. If the grand jury was convening on tomorrow, they would have been convening on charges of negligent homicide, hit and run driving with a fatality, and reckless operation of a vehicle, which would have landed Kyren into jail had he been convicted. And what a lot of people are suspecting, what I suspect too, is because of those charges and the nature of the charges, and especially the consequences even before his trial began. Sadly, that was a factor into what happened to him with his passing. Uh, I'm still, like I said, I'm upset at what happened to him. I wish that he could have gotten help. I wish he would have gotten the help that he could have gotten, but that didn't happen. But may he rest in peace. Rest in peace to this brother. We only pray for him, his family. He was 24. So this wasn't going to be a long live stream, guys. And I know I owe you all. I got to do another one, a follow up. We're going to have to talk about this Camelo Anthony situation because I've looked at the police report and I have more questions than I have answers on it. I don't want to get into it today, right now. I did want to come on because I know that a lot of you didn't see me on Thursday. And like I said, I haven't gone, I haven't been um, coming on that much on Thursday anyway. So why don't y'all give me a call or hit me up via email? You can't call me, but y'all hit me up via email, ladies and gentlemen. So no, it's no joke. It's no joke. Mental health is no joke, but I think this was more than just obviously uh, mental illness. This was from pressure. This was from social media. This was because of a criminal investigation that he was going through. I believe all of this was a factor, and it just was too much for him to handle. And he felt, he couldn't get out of this alone. And especially if you're facing jail time and you're in your early 20s, if you're talking about possibly, and I doubt he would do 10 years in jail, but in prison, but if that were to happen, basically essentially, he was looking at the end of his NFL career before it even started. And I think that that was a factor in all of this. But let's go ahead. I'm going to wrap this thing up. We have 220 people right now, especially on X. The one thing I love about Elon Musk is they removed that shadow banning that they were doing on Twitter because uh, a lot of content creators who had videos or anything that were on X weren't getting the views that they were supposed to. They were messing with the algorithm. That's the great thing I like about Elon that he's done, at least with this aspect. Uh, but y'all be safe and be blessed, man. And please check on one another. If you ain't heard from your partner in a while, check on them, see how they doing. All right. Y'all be safe and be blessed. Look, and if you love me for my time, please drop something in the Cash App, PayPal, Zelle. As you know, we're not monetized. We've been fighting ScrewTube over the shadow banning and a censorship issue that we have here. But that's why I've switched to places like Rumble. So make sure you get on Rumble and hit that notification bell. Yeah. Y'all be safe and be blessed. Yeah, Louisiana. And then Uh, supposedly, he probably would have had another charge in Houston because when he fled the police, from what they're saying, they went after him and he fired a gun in the ground. They would have charged him with discharge of a weapon too, and they would have done that. So yeah, it was just he had a meltdown. Uh, I think that's part of it, but yeah, he didn't see anything where politely. Who knows if they were working something out with the DA behind closed doors? Maybe they were going to ask him, hey, he's got to do a little time or something on this. I don't know. And that probably set him off. I don't know exactly what happened other than what's being reported. I can always assume. And yes, I think the evidence is likely that the prospect of him going to prison for something like this and his career being cut short before it started got to him. But yeah, check on your people, ladies and gentlemen. You never know what somebody is going through. All right. Y'all be safe, be one, and be blessed. I'll holla. Peace. Whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today. But if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on do our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right. I'll holla. Peace.